Hi, my name is Steve Wise, and I'm the president and founder of Mental Fitness LLC. Thank you for having me. More importantly, thank you to Liz Lamping, the executive director here at PHRA. Back to the future, don't start believing. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm eager today to talk about motivational training, lasting change in the workplace. But before we get right into that, let me introduce myself a little bit. Again, my name is Steve Wise. This is a picture of myself and my wife, Teresa, at a Pirate game. We are fans. Next, we have our pet family. In the upper left-hand corner, we have Hamilton, a Collie Shepherd mix. Next to Hamilton, we have Butters, a Shih Tzu. Below Hamilton, we have Ella, a Black Pomeranian. And next to Ella, we have Sierra. I hardly ever wear black to a professional presentation just because I'd be covered in dog hair. It's not a good look for me, but I love our adopted pet family very much. Slightly more than I love our adopted pet family, however, I love our 3-year-old son, Wesley. This is him and I swimming in a pool this summer. He adds joy and value to my life, and he just started preschool. That's Wesley. And then we complete our family with our 5-month-old daughter, Madison Rose. Madison keeps me up at night, but I love her too. I am thankful for both of our children, our pet family, and my wife. And that is a bit about me on a personal level. On a professional level, I am the president and founder of Mental Fitness LLC. We are a team of 9, including many of the people you see here in this picture, including Ashley Potts, a licensed clinical social worker, Howard Irwin, a licensed clinical social worker, myself, Jessica Calhoun, a child therapist and licensed clinical social worker, Daniel Ruffalo, who does guided imagery, and Sean, our social media intern. That is some of the team here at Mental Fitness. I love the team that we have, and I am excited to continue to see the business grow. And it is an honor and a privilege to be the president and founder of Mental Fitness. So, what is exactly mental fitness? Well, what mental fitness is, it's the idea that we have 60,000 thoughts per day, and that's about 1 thought per second. The challenge is we don't often think about our thinking. We think of the 2,000 calories we consume every day, and we are mindful of that. And we consult with nutritionists to eat better and have less toxic eating habits. And that's kind of how we position ourselves as therapists and speakers here at Mental Fitness, that we have 60,000 thoughts a day, but 95% of them, 57,000 of those thoughts are the same as the days before. And up to 45,000 of those thoughts are negative. It's a 3-to-1 negative to positive ratio. What we do here at Mental Fitness, whether it's with individuals or companies, is we help them think better about their thinking. Just like a nutritionist helps people with the 2,000 calories we consume, we here at Mental Fitness help individuals and organizations better think about their thinking, whether that's a workplace attitude like we're going to talk about today, or individually. So one more quick thing here. Attitude is everything. Having negative thoughts is very much like eating a greasy cheeseburger. If you eat a cheeseburger, you're going to feel tired and sluggish. If you put junk in your mind, you're going to have a toxic emotional state as well. What we're going to look at today is motivational training, lasting change in the workplace. We're going to talk about what needs to happen in a workplace culture to keep people engaged. What needs to happen in a workplace culture to keep people productive and to keep morale high. Most specifically, we're going to talk about keeping morale high because I believe that to be most important. But before I play my whole hand here, let's jump right into things. So when businesses think about the measurable variables of how their company organization is doing, we tend to think of 2 things. We think of turnover and productivity. And the 2 questions we ask ourselves when we look at those variables are, how do we increase productivity and how do we decrease turnover? I am here to tell you today that those are the wrong questions to ask. When we think about productivity and turnover, right now we are in a nationwide staff shortage almost across the board in every organization. It is incredibly hard hiring and retaining people. My hope is that throughout the presentation today, some of these things will be valuable to you in helping with that problem we are all facing right now. So if these are the wrong questions to ask, why are they wrong? What is the problem with asking these questions just kind of directly? What do we do to increase productivity? What do we do to reduce turnover? Well, here's the trouble if you go right at it. If you go right at it, what you get is this: presenteeism. Presenteeism, as defined by the Harvard Business Review in an article At Work but Out of It, defines when the worker is physically present but mentally checked out. Basically, they're going through the motions. What the article mentions is that when someone is going through presenteeism, we are seeing only 2/3 of a worker because 1/3 of them is completely checked out. This is terrible for productivity. The other thing that we are seeing right now, culturally, across the board, is the Great Resignation, is what we're calling it. Real quick here, we tend to rethink our jobs in times of non-normative events. Sometimes that can be a phase of life, the birth of another child, it can be getting married, it can be losing a loved one or a parent. We tend to rethink our jobs and the value of them during non-normative events. What we're seeing is that COVID has been a non-normative event for everyone, and now everyone is rethinking their jobs. So what are they thinking about when they're rethinking their jobs? What are they considering? What are we really looking for? More than ever, workers are thinking about what they want. They're valuing a company's culture. If we're going to work 50 hours a week somewhere, we want it to be in a place that we enjoy and feel valued at. We're looking for meaning. We want more than just a job. We want to feel as though we can be outward facing and that our service helps people and others transform as a result. We're looking to have fun and be a part of a great team. And that is that our colleagues are ones that we can trust and don't dread working with. And lastly, workers are looking for autonomy and flexibility. It's 2021. If we don't need to come to the office because it's a burden in the commute, that is getting harder and harder to just enforce by saying you have to do it. So when we think about going right at productivity or turnover, here's the problem. Those are the incentives, the bottom line numbers of upper management and owners. But when we think of employees, their incentives are not to work harder and stay longer. Their incentives are to have a great company culture, to feel a part of something bigger than themselves, to feel as though they have meaning and purpose in their work. And that is what we are going to talk about today. So what then is the real problem? The real problem is low morale. I found this stat. I apologize that I don't cite it. I have the citations at the end of the presentation here. But the amount of money lost on low morale is enough to give every working American around $3,491. That stat blows my mind, that is the amount divided by every American worker that we are losing annually because of low morale. So why then is that number what it is? That it's the equivalent of about $1.50 an hour that we're losing in every American because of low morale. Well, it presents itself in presenteeism. It presents itself in apathy. It presents itself in toxic pessimism. It presents itself in laziness, which I often don't actually ascribe to the employee, but rather just not being motivated with the right incentives. And it gets labeled as lazy, as a kind of person shaming sort of way. And then poor attitude, because it's hard to do something if you're not truly motivated to do it. So we put that burden on the person. I don't think that's fair, but at the heart of it is because the morale of the company and the culture is not there. So here's the key in all of this. Productivity and turnover are the wrong focus because they are not at the core. At the core is poor morale. That is the problem. High turnover rates and low productivity are the byproducts of poor morale. They are not individual characteristics of the people. As easy as that narrative is to say, it is the wrong one. What we need to do is what can we do to change our systems and our culture to better engage the people that we have? That is the right question to ask. So, next slide. Fixing morale is key. According to the International Journal of Incentive Research and Development, Research and Development, morale is the key to retention and acquisition of high-performing employees. So, again, when we focus on productivity and turnover, it is the wrong focus. These are secondary measurements. They are not primary steps or causes. The better question is, how do we improve the morale and culture of our team? That begins to get to the core of it. Increased productivity and decreased turnover are byproducts. If you take nothing else from this presentation, remember that those are byproducts of having good morale as a team when you see the increased productivity and decreased turnover. So, how do we actually scientifically measure morale? I have personally researched this topic for the better part of a decade. And as the leader of a team of 9, 10 folks, I've been in the fortunate position to test this. And really, morale in my research and experience comes down to 3 things. And you can search anywhere. This is kind of a meta-analysis of a ton of other research. It comes down to 3 things. In order, those 3 things are: 1, feeling valued and important as a part of the team. 2, the strength of one's relationship with their immediate supervisor. And 3, level of autonomy. The greater the autonomy, the better. If it is that those 3 boxes are checked, it is most likely that you will retain an employee for a long time and the morale and culture of your organization will be strong. If it is, however, that one or none of those boxes is checked, that is a quick script for presenteeism, low productivity, and a high turnover, low retention rate. So what we are going to do is we're going to look at today, how do we improve those things, specifically those 3 things. Predictor of success number 1, feeling valued and important as a part of the team. If you notice here, we've chosen to use a picture of an employee being watered, that it is a growing picture, as if the employee were a plant and growing with nurture and water. It's a good picture. It's a deliberate picture, because to nurture an employee, or better yet, a team member, is the best way to reach someone. You want to make them feel valued and important. The question is, how do we actually get someone to feel valued and important? What does that look like? What can we do to get them to feel that importance? To not just feel as though they're a cog in the wheel or another number or a warm body. How do we make them, the person and their work, feel valued and important? Let's look at some suggestions. A, we must first understand that relationships take time. There is no cheating this process. And the first goal in this process is to get to know the person's map. What I mean by that is, what makes this person unique as an individual? What are their hobbies? What are their family members' names? What are their children's names? What are their pets' names? What pets do they have? What makes them a unique person? So I have some suggestions here that could be ways in which you can enhance one's map. Quick side note here. There's a lot of translation between the work of John Gottman, who works in couples counseling, who works to improve relationships of couples. And he says one of the first steps to do is to get to know your partner's love map better. The same thing applies in business relationships, without kind of the love and intimacy part, but still I want to build a trusting relationship. I am going to show you via my genuine interest in you how much I care, and that builds trust. And that begins with the leadership. That begins with them taking that interest. And here are some strategies that you can do to do that. The 4 tendencies of personality. This is a test come up with by Gretchen Rubin, and it says, are you an upholder, an obliger, a questioner, or a rebel? It is a very unique matrix of whether you say yes or no to external or internal demands, and each personality has pros and cons. I do not have the time to get into that today because that is a separate whole presentation, but it is wonderful in learning both the strengths and weaknesses of the people in your organization and their personality tendencies so that you can pair people to play to their strengths and compensate for the weaknesses. Thumb balls. This is a thumb ball. It is a fun icebreaker game. You throw the little kind of soccer ball around wherever your thumb lands is something you answer. Concert or play I want tickets for, people I admire, sports championships I watch, Olympic events I watch. It gets crosstalk between employees in the organization and gets them getting to know each other better, which creates synergy and connections and creativity. Small thoughtful gifts are a great way to show that you know one's map. The more thoughtful, the better. If you know someone's favorite candy and you show up to work with some Starburst because that's their favorite, it's very thoughtful. That's what very much matters. A donation to a person's favorite charity. It shows not only did you take the incentive to get to know their favorite charity and what causes they most believe in, but it says that, hey, I believe in this cause with you and I'm willing to put a little bit of money behind it. Recognition of work anniversaries go a very long way. So then that way one can feel proud of their retention rate. It's almost like having a clean date in AA or NA. It's something that people take pride in the longer they've been with something. Let's let people take pride in the work that they do and encourage their longevity in the organization. No reason bonuses are roundups. If you have a no reason bonus, some variable reinforcement that just says, hey, I just think you've been doing a great job. I have a reason for this. It's not a work anniversary. It's not any reason other than I just felt like rounding up this time. Long story, slightly longer, is this. We don't make our employees better. We nurture more trusting relationships. There is no cheating that process. I hope that some of those suggestions are helpful. Again, you can use the thumb ball. You can use get to know you questions. Here are some fun get to know you questions. When I do this with the team at Mental Fitness, what we do is we have just a large plastic container, and we randomly pull out questions and answer them. And then we get crosstalk amongst the team. And it's a great team building bonding activity that makes people feel valued on a unique and individual level. So some fun questions to ask. What game show do you think you could win? If you were famous, what would you be famous for? Would you rather win a gold medal or a Nobel Peace Prize? If you could be an animal, what would you be? What job would you be terrible at? If you had to read one book for the rest of your life, would you rather be able to breathe underwater or fly? If your hometown was a food, what would it be? So these questions seemingly have nothing to do with how are you being more productive? And good, they shouldn't. This is all just about, I value you as a person. We are going to build trust. We're going to show that we appreciate your work, as evidenced by work anniversaries, other things. We're going to show that we appreciate you as a person. And this builds trust and camaraderie amongst the team. And it can be done virtually too. Even in COVID times, we did this at Mental Fitness here completely virtually, and it was a lot of fun. So again, the goal here is to make the employee, make the team member feel valued. So a little bit more of scientific research here. When we look at the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, one of my favorites, when people experience gratitude from their manager, they're more productive. We've all had those managers, I assume we all have, that we only hear from when we screw something up. That is a terrible ratio if you want to actually make people productive. So there's a thing now called the Lasada Line, and it was very popular several years ago. It's recently been challenged for its methodology, if the exact ratio is correct. But the spirit of it, I fully and wholeheartedly agree with. So the Lasada Line was a measurement, a study done by Michelle Lasada that thought, what is scientifically the best ratio of praise to criticism? Is it a whole bunch of criticism with the occasional nugget of praise, like kind of like old school football coaching or kind of military-esque sort of approach? Is it all praise and no criticism? What Michelle Lasada found was that you needed a 2-to-1 ratio of praise to criticism to maintain baseline. To improve productivity, you needed more of a 6-to-1 ratio of praise to criticism or redirection. So as I think about that, again, I said like that's been challenged if it's been exactly perfect. The spirit of it, I believe in. The spirit of it, even the military believes in. When they were studying platoon leaders, they found that the ones that were actually the most positive had the highest performing platoons, right? So even some of our most established organizations are realizing the psychology of, positivity and being more mindful of their positive to negative ratio. So I ask you, and I ask myself, as a parent, am I giving a good praise to criticism ratio? As a leader here at Mental Fitness, am I giving good, genuine, specific compliments frequently to continue to fuel my employees? Or am I just reaching out to them when something goes haywire? And what ratio am I doing that at? Ideally, 2-to-1 keeps people at a baseline. Greater than 2-to-1 is what facilitates even greater results. So there is a challenge here. And that challenge comes in perception. The gap here is between the perception of the manager and the employee. And this perception gap is called the illusion of transparency. The illusion of transparency is basically this. There's a gap between how much you think you know about how people feel, more specifically, how managers overestimate how much they believe their employees know that they care, and how much people actually know. How much employees see or truly feel that their manager cares about them. That gap, the overestimation of managers thinking that their employees know how much they care, and employees not quite seeing that caring along the same lines, is a painful gap. Because when employees don't feel cared about, valued, and important, they're likely to leave. So how do we bridge that gap? The challenge is, I don't know when somebody's worried, right? I know, though, when somebody does certain things. So here's where having a unique experience as a therapist and as a business leader come into play. There was a gentleman named Gary Chapman who wrote The 5 Languages of Love. Again, he wrote it for more kind of intimacy in intimate partner relationships, but the same principles apply even in business relationships. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, gift giving, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. One quick qualifier here for all of us HR professionals in the audience. Physical touch is a risky one. Physical touch, pat on the back, nothing more than that. Want to avoid dual relationships in the workplace. But words of affirmation, these are specific, genuine compliments about how the person is doing in their job performance. The more specific, the better. When you notice the little things and you point that to their attention, that goes a long way. Gift giving, again, small, thoughtful gifts. It is the thoughtfulness of the gift that counts. The gift is a reflection of how well you know that person's map. Quality time. We're going to talk a lot about this here in the relationship part, predictor of job satisfaction. That it's not always just work time, it's spending time with that person. Time is a gift, time is a form of caring. And when we have quality time, sometimes people value that as a means to know that they're feeling appreciated and important. Acts of service. This is how can I help you? When we talk about servant leadership, right? This is how can I ease your burden, right? How can I get you more support? How can I get you more resources? How can I be a resource for you? And lastly, a physical touch. It can be a fist pound, it can be a pat on the back. Obviously, we want it to be a professionally appropriate touch, if any touch at this point. But all of those things are actions that speak to how much you value that person, and aren't just kind of thoughts or worries. They're all great strategies that a leader can bestow upon his or her team that let them feel valued and important. And even if you know their specific love language, you might be able to customize what approach they like most. Do they like the quality time? Do they like the, what can I do to ease your burden? If you know that about your kind of employee or fellow team member, you can kind of customize your actions to give them the appreciation, if we sub out appreciation for love, to give them the appreciation in the means in which they most value receiving it. So that's part one. We don't have a ton of time here today. I only got an hour, so we're gonna fly through these, but that is part one. Feeling valued and important as a part of the team, #1 predictor of job satisfaction. Number 2, relationship with immediate supervisor. The reason it is immediate supervisor and not president and CEO is because this is the person with whom we have the most direct interaction. And that therefore makes it the greatest predictor of any relationship in the workplace of job satisfaction. Okay, this is a busy slide. So I'm gonna read through it real quick and I'm gonna talk about it. Nope, I'm gonna talk about it first. All right, so here's the deal. The challenge with a lot of people who get promoted into a supervisory position is that there is a supervisory lack of training. Oftentimes people are promoted into supervisory positions simply because they've kind of outgrown their job, proven themselves very good at it, and this is a means to promote them and keep them engaged and challenged. The challenge is that we don't often train these supervisors to have the soft skills of leadership. So here's a case in point. Any leader can say to a person, here's the situation, here's what you did wrong, and here's what you need to do to fix it. And from a, I don't want to think about that too hard standpoint, that might seem like a fine and direct approach. Here's the situation, here's what you did wrong, here's what you need to do to fix it. Direct, simple. However, it's also perhaps not the best. When we look at what that approach can do, here's the situation often ambushes the employee. They didn't know it was coming. Here's what you did wrong is both assumptive in that it is egocentric in one's point of view that I assume that I know what you did wrong, and myopic. It doesn't take the time to hear the employee's kind of perspective on things. Lastly, here's what you need to do to fix it is condescending. It's presenting oneself as an expert and the other person as subordinate, and that almost always comes off as condescension and then has some sort of resistance building. When you get the "you're right" response, that you're building resistance. The better approach, albeit takes a bit more time and tact, is one that goes like this. Hey, Bill, insert any employee's name. Could we just plan a time to talk about what happened last week? 15 minutes. I would like to hear the perspective. I'd like to hear the situation from your perspective. What this does is it is asking for and planning the right time to talk. It doesn't ambush the person, and it gives them regarding what, so they don't have anticipatory meeting anxiety, right? 2, it says, tell me the situation from your perspective. I'm here to listen. And then the manager says, so what I'm hearing is, so let me get this straight. So what you're saying is, and reflects it until they get the "that's right" response. Then you have attunement. Then the leader has done a good job of seeking to understand without being understood. That is a key way to go, that you must first, as a leader, seek to understand and then perhaps be understood if necessary. The next question is, how do you think we could have done it better? And that question is great in the sense that it elicits an idea from the employee. It doesn't just say, here's what you need to do. It says, so what are your ideas? I'm curious to hear them, and makes the person feel valued and important. You'll see that all of these tie in throughout. Lastly, in the spirit of servant leadership, the leader asks, so how can I help? How can we work together to fix this? How can we work together to achieve the mutual goal, right? And usually when you set out the outline of the meeting, you kind of come up with a mutual goal, that we have better communication, whatnot, that the boss offers themselves as a humble servant in achieving that goal. So even one training on effective communication and bringing out the best in others, learning some of these soft skills for your management, for your supervisors, can go an incredibly long way. It boggles my mind how often we put people in positions of supervisory leadership roles without them actually having any training on communication, soft skills, leadership management. Even one training can go a very long way. So the question is, what is the role of a boss? The role of a boss is to serve. The role of a boss is to keep one's word and to have integrity, because that's what builds trust. So when you say, hey, we're going to have a performance review in 6 months, and then you kick the can for another 3 months after that, that's not trust. That is not integrity, right? As a leader, your job is to be a support. It is to give people your time, resources, expertise, suggestions, listening ear to help them do what they do best. So what do employees want in a great supervisor? Employees want a couple things. They want opportunities for growth. Employees don't want one seat on the bus and to sit in that seat for the rest of their careers. Most want to continue to have new roles and challenges. We learn about 80% of our job in the first 6 months. So most employees want opportunities for growth, and they want them to be clear. When they are not clear, there's no timeline or there is no definitive path. That's when you see resistance. It's not laziness, it's not procrastination. It's often that there is not a clear time-bound path. Next, they want adequate time for training. Most people want to do their job and do it well. It helps them feel important in their role. If they're not properly trained to do so, that hurts their sense of importance and hurts their relationships. So here are some things that I suggest supervisors can do. They can make their employees not just feel like a number or a cog in the machine, get to know them on an individual level. Elicit what ideas they have. Ask, what do you think could make the organization better? And then after you implement them, which is incredibly empowering to the employee to make them feel valued and important, you give them a lot of public credit. We took this person's idea, we implemented it, it had great results. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Maria, right? This was your idea and it helped change the organization, and we appreciate you for it. You recognize what makes them individuals, and you allow time for self-care. We're going to talk more about that as well. I would rather have an employee working 4 days a week at 100% than an employee working 5 days at 70%. We want to be inclusive. If you have an option in a meeting of being inclusive or exclusive, I always recommend be as inclusive as possible. Obviously, you don't want people in certain meetings that they probably shouldn't be privy to certain information about the business that is, not their role or pay grade. But when you have the option to be inclusive or exclusive, I always encourage people to be as inclusive as possible. So that way the employee feels the sense of acceptance and belonging as a part of the team. Recognizing accomplishments. Recognizing accomplishments is one of the greatest things you can do as a leader. Whether it's someone who, just thinking personally, who started their own blog, who just got married, who had a child, who ran a marathon, who, whatever it is that they were working on personally and accomplished, if you recognize that, that is so rewarding. Story here is when I was in college, I went to school at Penn State Erie, and I was 19 and 21 years old. I ran 2 marathons at those ages. Each time my professors knew that I was running these because often I would have to miss the Monday of class for travel reasons. And most supported that. But one in particular, Dr. Loss, after I had completed the marathon, very beginning of class, said, students, I would like to point out that Steve over the weekend ran in the Columbus Marathon, finished, and I think that is pretty incredible. I can't, even walk 26 miles, and he just ran it. So let's give him a round of applause. And that has forever stuck with me. This was a decade ago, and I still remember how valuable and important that recognition was to me, and that he cared to do that. You can do the same as leaders. So when we think about leadership, there are, and kind of influencing others, there's generally two approaches to them. This is my dog Hamilton here, and the title of the slide is simply Love and Respect. My relationship with Hamilton is one of both love and respect. I command respect from Hamilton in the sense that if I didn't command respect, it would be hard to keep this 80-pound dog off the bed. I also invest in the relationship with Hamilton and aim to increase our bond at all times. The answer is not always carrots or sticks. Yes, Hamilton likes getting treats. Yes, sometimes Hamilton needs a yell or some sort of other negative reinforcement to let him know this is out of bounds. You can't leave the yard, can't jump in the bed. But what influences him the most? Love or respect. For me, it is more love. It is that I show that I care about him by taking him for walks, by petting him, by talking with him, right? It's an interesting kind of sequitur here to transition from the relationship with a dog to a leader's relationship with an employee, but there are a lot of analogies here that you want to have clear boundaries and expectations to command respect. At the same time, you want to have fun. You want to do some team building. You want that person to enjoy your company, right? If I'm going to spend 50 hours a week at work with someone, I want to genuinely enjoy their company. So what can you do to have more enjoyment at work and have a better relationship? You can do team building activities. Over summer here at Mental Fitness, we don't have traditional Zoom staff meetings. We had a disc golf day, and Sean and Daniel came, and here's something I believe I stole from the book, The Culture Code. I can't remember its author, but it has always stuck with me. Collisions create connections. The more you can get your people colliding, the more employees become your best marketers. They tell other people how awesome it is to work at that organization. They tell other people how awesome it is to come as a customer or client to that organization. Collisions create connections. Connections lead to creativity, trust, and synergy. Every word on this slide is very important. Collisions, getting people to get to know one another better, create connections and trust. Connections lead to creativity. They lead to mutual referrals. They lead to synergy, as 1 + 1 often equals 4 when you have two people working together and bringing different kind of viewpoints and skill sets into a project that make it better than any one individual could have done alone. Team building does all of that, and you get to have fun with it. Another summer self-care thing we did as a team was to go to a pirate camp, right? That's myself, Howard, Jessica, and Spencer. And it was a lot of fun, and it created a lot of connections and a lot of synergy. And now we can trust each other with referrals, and we can, I believe if I were to want to increase productivity in any way, this is a cooler way than saying, hey, we need to talk about your numbers and, look at that. This does that in a more fun, less direct, less threatening, more effective way. So, connection creates meaning. Workers, again, don't just want a culture that is fun, they want a job that is meaningful. The Harvard Business Review states that even a mundane job can be meaningful if you do it alongside people you like and care and connect about. and connect with. So that's why it's important that we all have tasks in our job, paperwork or CEs or other regulations, things that we have to do, quotas we have to meet. When we're doing it with someone else, it makes it more meaningful. And there are ways to foster those connections at work that can accelerate the process that would just happen organically and or prevent any discord that might happen organically if you do not have these type of team building, relationship building things happening. So a couple quick more tips here with relationship building. Check in early and often. It just lets the person feel valued and cared, that they're not floating on their own island indefinitely. They're just saying, hey, I just want to check in and see how things are going. How can I better service you? Do you have any issues? Give me feedback. Giving balanced feedback. The common sandwich technique of compliment, criticism, compliment often confuses the employee. I actually kind of like the sandwich technique, but that's a bigger discussion. Avoid giving both types of feedback at once. I agree with giving balanced feedback because the thing is, people want to do well at their jobs. And if you don't give them feedback that is somewhat critical, they're not going to get better, right? If I'm writing a book, it's great when somebody tells me, hey, I love what you're writing. It is better when someone tells me this paragraph was kind of confusing, right? I want to be good at writing a book. Most people want to be good at doing what they are doing. And feedback given assertively with a well-trained supervisor can actually build the relationship and show that you care. Address growth opportunities. Clients want to see a path ahead. They want to see a clear path so that they're always working for something greater. If they're not working for something greater, what are they working for? There is no real complacency in work. It is usually either you are growing and challenging and getting yourself outside of your comfort zone, or stagnation does not last long before it turns into decline. Don't fear negative feedback. Okay, employees want to know when they're doing well and when they're off track. When you tell them they are off track, they can course correct more quickly. This increases engagement. You addressing their weaknesses shows that you see greater potential in them. And then here think of the coach that rides only the best players, right? The coaches who are hardest on specific players, the reason they choose those players is they see the most potential in them. That is the same thing that we as leaders can do, is not to kind of ride our players in a demeaning way, but in a way that says, I recognize that I see more potential in you. I believe in you, maybe even more than you believe in yourself. And then they believe in themselves, and then the performance improves. The best predictor of one's success in anything is their belief in themselves. As leaders, it is our job to believe in them, to give them feedback, to give them consistent check-ins and measurements with how they're doing and how things are going. 2 slides here to wrap up this part. 1, no job is beneath the leader. Here I have, it is vital that leaders are able to connect to employees at all levels. And I do mean all levels. Custodial, the maintenance people, the admin workers, all the way up to upper admin, everyone. It is vital that leaders know the names of their people, connect with them, because it shows that no job is beneath the leader. It is hard to respect someone who isn't willing to do what you're doing. So I have a picture here of 2 dishwashers. And the story here is that when I was 18 years old and washing dishes at Bravo, it was a tough job. It was a really tough job. Plates were scalding hot, the dishwasher would overflow, you get athlete's foot. It's a really challenging job. And oftentimes Bravo would do a high volume of business, and the dishes would get overwhelmed. I remember one time we were understaffed and the dishes were just ridiculously backed up. The executive chef did not send a line cook back to bail us out. He himself came back and bailed us out. Chef Michael, I have never lost respect for him because he showed that no job was beneath him. And that made me more willing and motivated to do my job. We as leaders need to show that to our employees as well. No job is beneath us, that we connect with employees at all levels. Last for this part here, Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Airlines, says, clients do not come first. Employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your clients, right? We've had such a focus on client satisfaction, and then we just kind of put that first. For me and for Richard, that is the wrong order. That is the exact same misnomer as putting productivity and turnover first instead of morale. If you take care of your employees, they become your best marketers. If you take care of your employees, they take care of your clients. Employees come first. And that is part two, that the relationship, the strength of the relationship with one's immediate supervisor is the second most important variable in job satisfaction and in building morale. Third, level of autonomy. It is 2021. Coronavirus proved that we can do a lot more from home than we ever thought we could when we had to. And that helped people feel more autonomous. And now people are looking for that in jobs more than ever. So, question, what's harder, hiring or retaining? Got your answer? Answer, survey says retaining. Retaining is harder. So a survey of 600 small businesses by Workist found that 63.3% of companies found retaining employees harder than hiring them. Now, I understand that hiring right now is particularly hard, but in general, retaining is harder, but it is also more important. So for those who stay, 70% of them are not reaching their potential according to Gallup, and 18% of workers are actively disengaged. So why is retaining more important than hiring? Because it's more cost effective. So when we look at the cost of turnover, what we are seeing is it is a lot harder, as most of us all know, to hire someone and train them, to find them, hire and train them, than it is to promote from within or to retain from those we already have. The cost of turnover, replacing entry-level employees, costs between 30 to 50% of their annual salary. For mid-level employees, it could be upwards of 150%. For senior-level employees, we're looking at 400% of their annual salaries. It is much more cost-effective to retain an employee than to try to hire a new one. I actually believe the opposite when it comes to clients. The client acquisition from a marketing standpoint is greater than client satisfaction, but not true for employees. For employees, better to retain and engage, much more cost-effective than it is to have high turnover rates and try to hire people because you undervalued your employees. Quite frankly, I never understand when businesses do this, that they won't promote from within, so they lose that person entirely, or they don't pay that person a good wage, and so they lose that person entirely. And what they see is they're thinking far too myopically at the wages they save by not giving that person a promotion and not seeing the cost of the acquisition and training of someone else. So right now we're in the Great Resignation. The question is, why are people leaving? Is it the work or is it something else? So people are leaving for two reasons. It's not necessarily the work. It is that they are overworked or micromanaged. Micromanagement is, having somebody breathe over your shoulder. It's that hypervigilance of, I don't feel like I have the trust that I have to be perfect. I can't make a mistake. I got somebody looking over me all the time who doesn't trust me whatsoever. And overworked, we're going to talk about some stats on that too right now. Prior to COVID, America was already the most overworked industrialized nation on earth. Globally, workers averaged 20 paid vacation days per year. Americans got just over 9. 76, 3/4 of us work more than 46 hours a week. That is insanity. We work 137 more hours per year than the Japanese, 260 more hours per year than the British, and 499 hours more per year than the French. We are overworked. Again, I would rather have an employee or a contractor or whomever working 4 days a week at 100% than 5 days a week at 70. What we're seeing is that we are 6 days a week at 50. We need to not just encourage self-care, but create systems that actually say, we value you getting rest and we want to give you the opportunity to have that as a part of being autonomous. And a part of having autonomy in today's work culture is having that flexibility to not have a commute and have more free time. It is the option to work from home. It is the option to work at your own pace so long as you're meeting the deadline. We'll talk about that more with Commanders Intent here in a minute. All work and no play. Only 44% of Americans use their vacation time each year and just basically allow wage theft to occur. It is the #1 reason for not taking time away. The #1 reason for that, I'm afraid of falling behind at work. So basically, organizations often sabotage employees where they say, hey, take your vacation, we want you to have rest, but then don't modify the work requirements to actually allow them to take a vacation. That's part of the problem. The other part, micromanaged. Again, we don't need another trainer teaching us to do self-care. We generally know how to care for ourselves. We're already overworked. We don't need micromanaged as well. We need, as employees, to have job satisfaction, greater autonomy and flexibility in our work. I do work-life balance trainings and I've done some self-care stuff. And I've unfortunately perpetuated this a bit, where it's like, here's how you as an individual can have a more resilient mindset, or here's how you as an individual can, better execute self-care. And there is some value to that. At the same time, if one is overworked and micromanaged, offering a yoga instructor to come to work on a lunch hour is a Band-Aid on a larger wound. What we need to do is figure out, okay, how can we give our employees more autonomy and flexibility so that they want to stay working here or they want to start working here. So we're going to talk about how to do that here in a minute now that we've exposed the problem. It is not just autonomy that people are looking for, but the level of autonomy. Basically, the more the merrier. Autonomy is the power to shape your work environment. So let's take a step back here and just define what autonomy is and what it is not. Autonomy is the power to shape your work environment and allows you to perform at your best. That in theory, if you're a night owl, you can work at night. If you work better from home, you can work at home. If you don't work well at home, they have an office to come to. Autonomy is giving those options to folks. What autonomy is not is making your own rules or working for a free-for-all style environment. It's not, you're on your own island, just figure it out. Nobody wants that. They want a relationship. They want guidance. They want clear paths. Engagement, like we talked about the strategies for your relationships with your immediate supervisor, engagement increases with autonomy. It does not decrease. The fear, the myth, is that if we give people more autonomy, they will become more disengaged. The actual research, according to entrepreneur.com, engagement increases with a higher level of autonomy. So, what is the foundation of autonomy? How do we get there? What does it look like to actually give someone autonomy? And just like in any relationship, the foundation of any relationship is trust. Without trust, autonomy is impossible. But we also have to consider that trust goes both ways. An employee must trust their manager to have integrity, to do performance reviews on time, to give them the actual time for self-care or for trainings or for pay increases, and not just kind of dangle a carrot that they never catch. From there, the employee reciprocates. This is important. Trust does go both ways. But the burden of trust, the burden of initiating trust, falls on the leader. The leader must show that first before they would expect the employee to reciprocate, not the other way around. Autonomy tips. freedom of choice is key, but too many choices leads to a paralysis of analysis. You want to give people options, but options within limits. If you let them choose from options, a couple options, it's very empowering. It's not overwhelming, but it gives the perception of choice when you give them a couple options, and that both avoids a paralysis of analysis and kind of a run amok free for all. Clear boundaries and expectations let employees feel confident in their assigned tasks. It avoids diffusion of responsibility and role confusion. Diffusion of responsibility is when we don't have clear protocols, procedures, and job descriptions, and therefore stuff that needs to get done, we don't know who does it, it falls through the cracks. Role confusion is very similar and can lead to a diffusion of responsibility. Role confusion is my role isn't clearly defined, so not my job that it fell through the cracks. So when you have role confusion, you get a whole lot of not my job, which leads to a diffusion of responsibility, which leads to stuff falling through the cracks, which is always a risk for everybody. Give employees ownership and credit of their work. The Sidney Crosby example. Sidney Crosby is an awesome leader, in my opinion. On the ice, he's very much a badass and has a mindset that I admire. Off the ice, he is very humble. He will say, Marc-Andre Fleury, Christian Jarry stood on his head and won this one for us. Brian Rust, he was incredible. I should have hustled back on that one shift where they got an odd man break. He takes credit when things go wrong. He gives credit when things go right. He is an excellent leader because he gives other people credit, which gets people to trust him. He's a team player and he's very humble. He uses we language. It is not I, Sidney Crosby, carried the Penguins to the championships. It's we. Those are hallmarks of great leadership. And they give people kind of autonomy when you give them credit for their work, that they don't feel like their work is going to be stolen. Show trust by investing in your employees. Employees are your best source of ROI, so invest in them. Don't be afraid to invest in them for the long term. The line here is that we want to give our employees all the skills and tools that they can leave at any time, but we treat them so well that they don't want to. But to do that, we have to give them those tools and resources and support to achieve their goals and not put them in a possible position where the quota is so high and the support's so low that the performance review reflects poorly on them, but really was on the system. Don't be afraid to invest in your employees. They're a worthwhile investment. A couple more slides here, back to 2 specifically, because I believe we are running against time. Commander's intent. Commander's intent is, for me, of all the things I've ever heard, the best way to show a contractor or an employee autonomy. What the commander's intent is, it's a military term, and it is, the commander's intent describes the desired end state. It clearly states the purpose of the mission in a singular unifying focus for all subordinates. It ought to be understood at least 2 levels below the issue of, below the level of the issuing commander. So here's what all that means. In the military, they are an organization that is very strict on protocols and procedures, probably to the point of micromanagement. They realized this when they would give somebody protocols and procedures for every situation, and then they would get out in combat, stuff would hit the fan, there was no protocol or procedure for it, and people froze. They didn't know how to act. So the military took a step back and said, how can we redo this? Maybe we got a little too in the weeds here. Now they go with something more called a commander's intent. And that is, here's the end game goal, right? Here at Mental Fitness, it's to help people achieve their full potential, right? It is, different for every organization, but whatever that mission statement is, people then can ask themselves, is this within the values of our organization? Is this leading us towards the end game goal, or is this away from that? That basically they can look at that big overriding goal and then make their own decision so long as it is in line with that company's goal or values. And that is the best way to kind of coach people to say, whether it's on a organizational level or even an individual level, I would like a presentation made on improving morale in the workplace. That's the commander's intent. I'm going to give you the freedom to research it. Bring me a draft and we'll correct it, right? That isn't, I want you to go to this site, this site, this site, and this site, and do this, that, and that, right? It lets people be the experts of their own path and gets a multiplicity of ideas that exceeds what one could even just provide on their own, and is more empowering. It says, this is your project. This is the commander's intent. So long as it's in line with that, here's the autonomy for you to do it. So in summary, focusing on productivity and turnover as a direct focus will only lead to more presenteeism, absenteeism, and later quitting and turnover. Focusing on morale instead, which is at the core, is key. Increased productivity and reduced turnover are byproducts of having great morale. The best way to improve job satisfaction and therefore to improve morale is to feel valued and important as a part of the team, to strengthen the relationship with the immediate supervisor, and to give someone a higher and greater level of autonomy. If people have those three things, they're going to be retained in a positive culture, high morale state for a long time. If those three things fall short, turnover and reduced productivity is inevitable. Having this focus on putting morale first is the best way to have lasting positive change in the workplace. And with that, I thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy. If you'd like to reach out to me, the website is mental-fitness.us. Thank you for having me.